Hey guys, it's Will with Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. As you can see, I am still at home. It's another coronavirus lockdown, super special. What do I have today for you? It's a Blu-ray review, and it is none other than Operation Condor, Armor of God 2. This is the 88 Films Blu-ray release, and this is a special film for me because this is this came out in 1997 in the United States. So this was released in 1991 in Hong Kong. Came out in 1997 in the US. And I was under the impression that this was the first Jackie Chan film I ever saw in theaters until I looked it up like a couple weeks ago. I saw this and First Strike in the same year. And as it turns out, First Strike actually came out first in the US. So First Strike was released in January of 97. So I would have been 13 then. And then this was released in July of 97. So actually almost 23 years ago. It's like in 2 weeks, it'll be 23 years since this came out in theaters in the US. I think it was July 18th of 97. So I would have been 14 then. And so this was the second Jackie Chan movie that I ever saw in theaters. And I absolutely loved this and First Strike when I first saw them. I still love these movies. And those two movies are the reason that I love Jackie Chan. And they're the reason I fell in love with Hong Kong cinema, really, because I know if you've heard me talk about this before, like the first film I watched where I was like, oh, Hong Kong cinema, I gotta check this out, was Wong Kar-wai, Fallen Angels. But Jackie Chan led me into all of that, really. And so this movie and First Strike are the reason this channel exists. So there you go. Yay, Jackie Chan, yay. Operation Condor, and yay, 88 Films for releasing this amazing Blu-ray edition. So what am I going to do? I'll do what I always do. I will talk about physical features of the release. I will talk about the picture quality, and then I will talk about the bonus stuff, which is the booklet and then the extra material that is on here. So, and that you will not be disappointed if you're a fan of 88 Films, if you know what they've done in the past for Jackie Chan, if you're a fan of this film. I know that this film in particular was one that a lot of people were really excited to see a proper Blu-ray release of with English subtitles. The reason being that the most commonly available version with English is the US cut, which I think, so Dimension Films, I was reading about this earlier while I was doing some research for this. Dimension Films bought the rights to that movie when it was released in Hong Kong, so in 91. I think Miramax put it out in theaters when it came out in 97. So there's a U.S. version, the one that was released in theaters, and it's the one that you can still get on. I actually have. So this is a Miramax Jackie Chan 8-film DVD box set. I got this for like $5, I think, at Best Buy in like 2011, 2012. And this has Operation Condor, Armor of God, Dragon Lord, Twin Dragons, Project Day 2, Super Cop, and The Accidental Spy on it. And the version of Operation Condor that is on here is 91 minutes. And that was the version that was released in theaters. And that is the most commonly available version on DVD and Blu-ray in English. And the version that is on here, well, the Hong Kong cut, which is the kind of like the standard version that Jackie Chan himself did, is 107 minutes. So there's 16 more minutes in this movie. I actually have this Hong Kong DVD of Operation Condor, which is the 117-minute version. But what I realized, or the 107-minute, version. What I realized when I watched the 88 Films release is I have never seen that version. So I own this, and I've never even watched it. So maybe I own too many movies. I don't know. You tell me. I would argue that it's impossible to own too many movies, but I think that my wife would disagree with me. But anyway, so I've never seen the Hong Kong version of that film, and so looking much like the Unabomber, I'm going to tell you what I think about this release. So you have the Kung Fu Bob slipcover artwork. As you know, I think Kung Fu Bob's artwork is incredible. I just love it so much, and I think he really knocked this one out of the park. The colors especially are really fantastic on this. They really fit, obviously, like the desert the movie takes place a lot of it takes place in the desert, and it really fits that the kind of the color scheme with the orange and the yellow and stuff like that. So you take that off, and what do you get? Oh, look, you get the same thing there because I didn't reverse it. So these all come with reversible artwork on these sleeves. So here's the disc, which you can see is the same as this. What you can see is basically what you have here on the Hong Kong DVD release that I have. Color scheme obviously being different, but so if you pop the disc out and you pop the liner notes out, you get the reversible artwork, which is what you just saw right there. Plus, I think the back is basically kind of the same thing, but there you go. So I mean, 88 Films, I just think does an incredible job with the physical packaging of these films. Like the artwork, like I said, from Kung Fu Bob is fantastic. If you order the first run of these movies, which I believe is 3,000, you get the slipcover in addition to kind of the regular cover art on here, and you get the booklet. And I'm going to show you the booklet right now. But as I've said before, I think I mentioned this in my Clan of the White Lotus review, which is the excellent 1980s Shaw Brothers film that was recently released by 88 Films, which is this one right here. That they use like a really nice paper in these. So I've mentioned this before. I think I mentioned this in the Double Dragons review, which is here, or Dragons Forever. Excuse me, not Double Dragons, Dragons Forever. There's a lot of dragons flying around in my head right now. But in that one, I sniffed the paper. Both of my parents work in publishing, and so I grew up around books, and I actually worked at a publishing company for a while myself as well. So I'm like really into paper and printed material, and they use really nice cardstock, and it's heavy, and it's not cardstock, but it's like nice paper. It's heavy. It has like a matte finish on it, so it looks really good. And so you have here Go Go Asian Hawk, which is by William Blake, right there, which is totally awesome. And you should so basically what this is it goes through the entire history of the if you don't know, Operation Condor is a sequel to Armor of God, right? So this essay here talks about the kind of like the whole history of the series, and how Jackie if you don't know as well, Jackie really seriously injured himself on Armor of God. He fell out of a tree and he smashed the back of his head, and he had to get like a plastic plate put into his head, and he had to have like brain surgery, I think, like brain surgery or head surgery, like emergency surgery. And it was like really, and they had to like halt filming for a while and stuff. So it's a really dramatic, intense story. And what happened on the set of that film influenced the way that he made films going forward from there. And so this essay here kind of goes into like all of that. It contextualizes it historically, and it talks about, it's very in depth, and it's like it really digs into the history of these films and how they relate to one another, and how they relate to what else was going on in Jackie's career, and kind of what he was trying to do as a filmmaker, as a star. The way that he went from being like very big in Hong Kong and basically like East and Southeast Asia to being like more of an international star. It's really interesting. And so then we have an interview with the lead stuntman, Vincent Lin, who's this guy here who you'll recognize from the wind tunnel fight in the movie. And I'll actually talk more about, as you can see, this is a very long interview. This is really good. It's really interesting. And I'm going to talk more about that when I talk about the special features, because I learned some pretty interesting stuff about that, the fight. And here we get into this. And so this, as you can see, this is a really long booklet. And this is probably of the 88 Films Jackie Chan releases that I have reviewed thus far. I would say that the essays and the interview in here are the most in-depth and give you the most kind of like historical context and understanding of when the film was made, how it was made, why it was made the way it was made, and all of those things. And it's just, and I'll talk more about this too. And I'm going to do a different video where I talk about watching this movie in 2020, kind of with the distance of history, and like, because a lot of stuff like was kind of buzzing around in my head. I haven't seen this movie in probably about 8 years. Like 7 or 8 years was the last time I watched it. And it was really different. Like, obviously I've been watching a ton of Jackie Chan movies recently, and like delving into the history of his body of work and stuff like that. So there's been a lot on my, like, I've been thinking a lot about these things, and I did a video recently, if you saw, on the Police Story, kind of like the evolution of the Police Story series. So from Police Story 1 to Police Story 2 to Super Cop, and how you can kind of see a lot about the evolution of Jackie's career as well as action films in general in that series. And so thinking about that and then watching this, all this stuff is kind of buzzing around in my head. So I'm going to do a separate video talking about that. So that's the physical presentation. The movie looks incredible. One thing that I find to be really interesting about this release, and this is something that is true of Miracles too, and I talked about this in my review of Miracles, is that, and I should tell you for the people who are the junkies for the technical information, I believe this is a 2K. Yeah, so there was a 2K restoration of the original 35 millimeter film negative. So this film, a lot like Miracles, is shot super wide and kind of at a distance. And so what that means is, like, I always think of, like epic films when I think of like Kurosawa, and I think David Lean, and who else? Like Tarantino has, he tends to shoot like very wide. And Sergio Leone shoots like super wide, and it creates these huge epic compositions. But there's so much visual information in them, and oftentimes the action is playing broadly across the screen, that on a small TV, it's a little bit overwhelming. Like, it's sometimes hard to be immersed, because I don't have a very big TV. So Mike, who edits these videos for me and who runs 80s Nerdgasm, he has a giant TV. And we watched Miracles on his TV, and it looks absolutely freaking incredible. Like, it's just phenomenal to see it like that. But I also watched it on my little TV, and there are scenes where it's like there's so much happening, and the picture is so clear, and the image is so wide that I'm like, whoa, what am I supposed to be looking at right now? But when you have that giant TV, it's almost like a theatrical experience. So that was very interesting, kind of like thinking about that and watching these films and picking up on that. So it looks incredible. That's what I'll say. And it sounds really good too. So there's multiple language tracks on here, and I'll talk about them all very briefly. They are there's the Cantonese mono, which was used theatrically, the Cantonese 2.0 surround sound mix, which is a true stereo track that was mastered for the Hong Kong home releases in the early 90s. And then there's the classic English dub. So that's 3 audio tracks. And I mean, the dub is what it is. If you've seen the dub, then you'll know what it is, and you'll be familiar with it. And it sounds a lot like a lot of the dubs for these classic Hong Kong movies. I much preferred the Cantonese mono, and I've said this before, that I really like the old school original mono audio tracks for these movies, not only because they remind me of like the theatrical experience, but also like kind of the VHS experience and like seeing these movies for the first time. But on this, it's interesting because in the non-mono stereo version, the dialogue is like mixed up, and it's like kind of dry and foregrounded in a way that makes it way more obvious that it's a dub, right? Because there's like American people in this movie. There's a Japanese actress in this movie. There's an actress from Spain in this movie. There's an Australian guy. Like, people were not speaking Cantonese on the set of this movie, right? So everything is dubbed, right? So it's like Fellini used to do that too, where he would have actors from all over the world, and they would just speak whatever on the set, and then the Italians would dub their own voices, and then other people will come in and dub the non-Italians in Italian, basically. And then so you have this kind of soundtrack that it sounds like it's like floating on top of the movie. But if it's done well, I think it works really well. And I think in that mono track, it works really well. But I mean, I'm not telling you that you can't enjoy whatever you want to enjoy, but I really like those mono soundtracks. So to dive into the special features, what do we have on this one? We have, and I'm just going to read it to you here, so I'm being very specific about everything, and you know everything that's on here. You have 2 versions of the movie. You have the 107-minute Hong Kong cut, and then you have a never-before-seen extended 117-minute version. I don't even know where they got this. Like, I don't know if this is a work print that Jackie was working on, that Golden Harvest and then Fortune Star or whoever like kept the negative for, or if this was like an early cut that they decided to cut some footage. This is all just wild speculation. I have absolutely no idea where this cut came from. but I honestly preferred that cut. The pacing is really good. So if you're familiar with the Hong Kong cut of Operation Condor, the pacing in the beginning is like manic. It's like Keystone Cops. Like it really is. Like it's so fast because a lot of the stuff that they trimmed out is in like maybe the first. Obviously, there's stuff at the end with like the big epic finale, and there's like a couple of kind of bits and pieces, like when they first get to Morocco, when they're in that hotel, there's a little bit trimmed out there. But the bulk of it is in the beginning, and the pacing is so much. But well, I don't want to say better. If you like the 107-minute version, obviously you'll be familiar with it, and that's like the version that you really love. But watching this movie with a little bit of distance, like I said, I've never seen the 107-minute version before, and I haven't seen this movie in like 7, 8, 9 years. The 117-minute version just has such good pacing. It's like so, the rhythm of it, and you know, Jackie Chan is really specific about rhythm. And if you watch interviews with like Benny Urquidez, for instance, he talks about when they did the fight for Wheels on Meals, and when Jackie Chan was like choreographing the fight, he would be like doing stuff like this, and like, and Benny Urquidez was like, "What are you doing?" And Jackie's like, "I'm finding the rhythm of the fight so that we know what we're doing." And so he thinks very rhythmically. And I think that ties into pacing in films and the rhythm of the film. And as I've said before, like when I reviewed The Protector, I talked about how the Hong Kong cut is sped up a little bit. And there's like establishing shots taken out and stuff like that. And there are people who think that the Hong Kong cut is better because of it, because it moves along faster. But I actually really like how James Glickenhaus paced that film, because I like establishing shots, and I like the way that movies set up, like, now we're in New York, this is what New York feels like, this is what New York sounds like, this is what New York looks like. Okay, now we're in Hong Kong, this is the look and the sound and the pace and the feel of Hong Kong. And like a lot of it gets trimmed out when you're cutting for time and action, basically, like cutting around that kind of stuff to get to the action and to trim down the length of the film. So that's the extended cut versus the kind of like standard theatrical Hong Kong cut of the film. And so moving on from there, you have there's trailers on here. So there's like the original trailer, and I've mentioned this before when I talk about trailers, but the original Hong Kong trailers for these movies are really cool because they were, in addition to being trailers for the movies, they were essentially like trailers for the media personality of Jackie Chan, or in the case of the Three Dragons films or Three Brothers films, they're Yuen Biao and Sammo Hung and Jackie Chan. But obviously this being just Jackie Chan, you see like him behind the scenes, you see him directing scenes, you see him doing stunts, like stuff like that, in addition to the trailer, the traditional trailer that you're used to seeing. That's like, this is what the movie's about, coming soon. So that's cool. And then you have there's a remastered trailer on here, that's on YouTube. I think it's like a trailer for the film that has the footage from the 2K remaster, and then it has like the 88 films, kind of like there's like a little yellow frame around it, and it says 88 films on the bottom. So if you've seen that on either the 88 films website or on YouTube, you'll know what that is. I think that's what that is. And I watched it, and here I am not remembering what it is. But and then you have newly translated subtitles for both cuts of the film. And there's two other things on here. So there's an interview with actor Bruce Fontaine. So Bruce Fontaine, he's probably on, I think this is him. So he's a martial artist and an actor. He's Canadian. I don't know, is that him? I think that's him. And he plays one of the two guys. So there's that guy with like the Fidel Castro look, and then the guy with him who has like the ponytail and does like the martial arts, who are chasing Jackie. The guy with the ponytail does the martial arts. That's Bruce Fontaine. And he is, like I said, he's Canadian, and he was a martial artist, and he was on like the Canadian Olympic team, I think, or the Canadian national team, wherever it was. And he ended up getting into movies, and he moved to Hong Kong at some point. And the interview is really interesting because he tells his whole history of how he came to be in Operation Condor. So he talks about, he worked with Carl Maka, and he was hired to be in one of the Aces Go Places movies. And he had no idea how to do basically like screen martial arts. He only knew how to do like competition martial arts. And so he completely made like a disaster of his first day on set, and he was fired. And so he talks about how he went down a notch, basically like doing much lower budget, less high profile films, and then worked his way back up to be in Operation Condor, and how that was like a great experience. And like, it took like 9 months or something to make this movie. And so a lot of the actors who play the like the foreign like mercenaries, henchmen, like the villains basically, they showed up in Morocco. They shot a couple scenes, and then they weren't in anything for a while. And like it shot in both Morocco and Hong Kong, but they were like hanging around, just like having the time of their lives. And so he has very fond memories of the movie. He talks a lot about like being on the set, and like I think he says that Rucker Hauer was also on location shooting a movie where they were, and so they were staying at the same hotel as Rucker Hauer, and they were like hanging out with him at the pool and like stuff like that. And then back in Hong Kong, like they talk about like the set for the, and this is something that, so there's also a commentary track on here by my two favorite commentary people ever, who are Mike Leader and Arna Venema, and it's another like incredible, classic, amazing commentary track, and I'm gonna talk about that in a second. But Mike Leader also, in that commentary track, he was on the set for this film, and he talks about how the sets were just completely insane, because everything that you see basically, it's not obviously shot in the desert, because you can't fake that, obviously, right? But like the hotel that gets all shot up with the machine gun, and the underground Nazi base in the desert, and all of those places, those are in, well, and obviously the stuff in Spain, I think it's in Spain too, right? Is it Madrid or is it somewhere in Spain? You can't fake Hong Kong for Spain, right? Well, you could try, but it probably wouldn't work very well. But all that other stuff is in the, like, these just incredible, gigantic, insane sets. And it's a really great interview with Bruce Fontaine. It's really cool, and it adds a lot of kind of flavor and understanding to the picture. So, commentary track. You know I love these commentary tracks. And I mean, really for me, having the Hong Kong and the extended release of, or the extended cut of the film on this release, make the release for me. For me, that's enough for, you know, the price of admission. But the commentary track is just, it's so good, because if you've heard me talk about these guys before, it's Mike Leader, who is like, he's a casting director. He's also been an actor. I think he produces stuff. And he's been working in Hong Kong since the late 80s, I think maybe 1989. 88, 89, and he knows all of these people, and he knows them personally. And like, he talks about you know, when Jackie Chan got the plastic plate put in his head, one of the things he does is he has people touch the plate, and he hums, and you can feel the plate rattling and his skull like vibrating. And so there's all these things about Jackie Chan and working with Jackie and working in Hong Kong and working on Hong Kong cinema, or in Hong Kong cinema, that Mike Leader knows firsthand, that you just can't fake that stuff. Like, you can't fake firsthand knowledge and experience of being on the sets of these movies. And he was on the set of this movie when they shot the finale. And then Arna Venema is a filmmaker who he told me at once on Instagram that he took classes with Godfrey Ho, who is, you know, if you know about him, then you know about him. And so, but that leads me to believe that he went to film school in Hong Kong. He's lived there for years, I guess, and he's a filmmaker himself. And so you have Mike Leader's firsthand experience of all of his years of working in Hong Kong and knowing all these people, and then Arna Venema also living in Hong Kong and also being a filmmaker, and like knowing how filmmakers look at movies. And you can learn so much just by listening to people who work in the industry and who make movies, talking about movies, because it helps you understand how those people think about movies and how movies are put together and why things work the way they do and why people make the decisions they make. And it's just so fascinating to me to hear that. And there's so much amazing information. Like I said in the Dragons Forever one, like in every scene there's some actor who walks in where Mike Leader's like, oh, that's so and so, and we worked together on this thing, and like we were friends way back in the day, and like that guy in that scene is an assistant director, and then he was on set, so they put him in the movie because it's free. You don't have to hire another actor. And he was one of my first friends in Hong Kong, and he's a great guy, and like all this stuff. And I didn't realize that this was the most expensive Hong Kong film ever made up to that point. So they talk about that in their commentary track. And they talk about the difference between Golden Harvest and then I think is it Golden Way International or something, which was like Jackie Chan's production company underneath Golden Harvest. And I actually made all of these are my notes from watching the commentary, because there's so much amazing stuff in there that I didn't want to forget anything. But some of this also is just like random notes I wrote down. But they talk about how the rating system works in Hong Kong, which is really interesting. Like, I know basically like category 1, category 2, category 3, and I guess this is category 4 too, maybe. But they talk about how like you can curse in English in a Hong Kong movie and get category 2, which is like a less prohibitive rating. But if you curse in Cantonese, you get category 3, which is a very prohibitive rating, and it makes it a lot harder to market your movie and put it out wide and make your money back and stuff like that. So just like really interesting stuff like that I wouldn't have known before. And they talk about like who's doing in, like, for instance, in the car chase that happens in Spain, like when Jackie's on the motorcycle, like when they show the motorcycle crashing and a guy flipping off the motorcycle, they're like, oh, that stunt was done by this guy and not Jackie. And they talk about how like Jackie's injuries were really starting to add up at this point, and how he was more wary about doing like his own insane stunts, but also he was moving more towards a focus on crazy stunts in movies than he was focusing on the kung fu. And so in the fight scenes, for instance, he would tell the martial artists, like, we're not going to do crazy kickboxing. Like, we're not going to, you're a mercenary. You're not a professional martial artist in this film. So it wouldn't make sense if you could do all this insane stuff. So he wanted the fighting to be like grounded in the reality of who the characters were, and the focus to be more on the stunts and like the car chases. And like, there's that crazy part where the motorcycle jumps off of a dock and it's Jackie Chan in the movie, but it's a stunt performer, like grabs the netting around this like big thing that's being loaded and is like swinging around on this net above the ocean. It's just, the stunts are just insane in this movie. And also to learn about like why Jackie would do certain stunts versus not do certain stunts. It's the behind the scenes information is invaluable. And honestly, like them doing these commentary tracks is almost like someone making a documentary or writing a book as they go through these films that came out in all these different eras with all these different people in them, documenting everything in the English language. So people like me who don't speak Cantonese and who don't have access to like the firsthand behind the scenes minutia, day-to-day history of these things can access them and have them for posterity. So it's really just incredible. And it's almost like 88 Films is doing two things with these releases. It's making available high quality, really great HD Blu-ray releases of these films, but also parallel to that, creating this huge body of English language documentation on these films in the history of Hong Kong cinema. And I don't have any of the Eureka Jackie Chan releases. I do have right here is the Criterion Collection Police Story 2 release, but I think 88 Films is really going above and beyond to create this huge library of information in English about these films in the golden era in Hong Kong cinema. So I've talked for way too long, and I apologize for that. My name is Will. This is my review of the Operation Condor 88 Films Blu-ray release. I will put a link in the description of this video if you are watching on YouTube to where you can go and buy this. It's £15, Great British Pounds. It's a Region B release, I should also say. I think I just dropped a pen. Have you heard a clatter? So that means that it will play on standard commercial European Blu-ray players if you're in the United States, if you're in South America, if you're in, God, where else? I guess Africa, Asia. I don't know what region Australia is. I would assume it's not the same region as Europe. You will need a multi-region player. So basically, if you're anywhere in the world except for Europe, that's the easier way to put it, then you need a multi-region player to play it. So my name is Will. This has been Hong Kong Cinema Appreciation Society. I thank you so much for watching. If you watched this long, if you feel like subscribing, huge thumbs up. Thank you. That helps us a lot. We will see you next time.